Magneto versus Red Skull. Magneto and the Red Skull are on opposite sides of history. Magneto grew up in a Jewish family living in Germany during World War II, and we all know Red Skull and Hydra's stance in World War II Germany, so it's safe to say that these two villains would almost never get along, right? In Acts of Vengeance from 1989, Magneto and Red Skull were actually temporarily united, but it's really important to note that Magneto was unsure whether this was the Red Skull that aided Germany in the slaughter of his people. So Magneto confronted him and Red Skull confirmed that he was indeed the original. It didn't take much for Magneto, the master of magnetism, to overpower the Skull, but unlike what you might think, Magneto does not take his life. Instead, Magneto leaves the Skull isolated in a stripped down fallout shelter 20 feet underground. He removed the ladder from the escape hatch, gave him 10 gallons of water, took out his homing transmitters, gave him no food and no light, just water, air, and his own depraved thoughts. Number 9. God King Doom versus Thanos. 2015's Secret Wars has Dr. Doom receiving the power of the Beyonders at the conclusion of Time Runs Out. The Latvian dictator is able to save reality from complete destruction at the hands of the Beyonders, stealing their power and merging all reality into a place called Battleworld, which he rules over as God Emperor. A few characters show up on Battleworld with their full memories intact, and they try to stop Doom and put things back to normal. One of them would be Thanos. Thanos, being the smug mad titan he is, decides to challenge Doom and refuses all of Doom's offers to work with him. So in one quick movement, Doom plunges his hand into Thanos' chest, grabs a hold of his spine, and turns his body to ash, leaving one of the most amazing comic panels ever. Number 8. Joker versus Alexander Luthor Jr. The Joker has a special something that just no other villain can really stand up to. What is it? Popularity. People love the Joker. This magic word, popularity, allows the Joker to beat out other villains that in the real world he would never be able to take down. It also allows him to save the day on occasion. In 2005's Infinite Crisis, Earth 3's Alexander Luthor Jr. attempts to remake the multiverse into one perfect reality. Perfect for him at least. By the end, well, he fails, but he finds himself cornered by Lex Luthor and Joker of New Earth, which is the mainstream continuity. Joker pretty ruthlessly scars Luthor Jr. with acid and then brings his life to a sudden end with a bang. And it was all because Alexander didn't include him in his scheme in the first place.
Number 7. Emma Frost versus Professor X. A lot of people think of Professor X as one of the strongest telepaths in the world, and he is, but he's not the only one. And although Emma Frost generally takes second place to the likes of her rival, colleague, and frenemy, Jean Grey, she can actually hold her own against Charles as it turns out, especially when she's smart enough to bait him into a trap, which, you know, Emma, she's a very smart gal. This so happens when Charles attempts to take control of Cyclops' mind to see if there's anything of Nathaniel Essex, Mr. Sinister, left in there. At least that's what he claims anyways. Emma sets a trap in Scott's mind, with his permission of course, and when Charles attempts to probe further, he basically sets off that trap, unleashing Emma. Emma is then able to take full control, having been biding her time wisely by setting up blocks and failsafes so that she can basically call the shots and take over Charles's mind, as she attempts to search Xavier's mind for the same thing, any trace of Sinister, and also torment him somewhat while doing so, as Emma says to Charles, at the risk of sounding vulgar, I own you, which, yeah, she kinda did there for a second. Number 6. War Thor versus Mangog. Mangog in general is just completely nuts when it comes to his power levels. There are less that are actually able to stand up against him in comparison to the number that he's decimated at one point or another in the comics. I mean, yeah, only a few people can do that. But one of the heroes who got it the worst was probably War Thor. War Thor ended up being confronted by Mangog and being classified as a god, and was absolutely decimated by him as a result. Issue number 701 of Mighty Thor showcases a brutal fight between the two when Mangog comes looking for the rest of the Asgardians and only finds War Thor. He even manages to completely destroy War Thor's hammer, which is super sad. Also then, of course, War Thor gets destroyed because no hammer, no War Thor. Number 5. Professor X versus Cyclops. I mean, this fight could easily be very one-sided, possibly going either way depending on who was writing and depending on where these characters were, but this one was really really, really one-sided because it ended in death. Charles's death. Professor X died in the raging fire of Scott Summers' Phoenix. During Avengers vs. X-Men, Cyclops became one of the chosen Phoenix Five after Iron Man, while attempting to destroy the Phoenix Force, split it into five instead. Cyclops becomes the last of the five left with the power though, and it becomes too much for him, corrupting him. Professor X, at this time a pretty hated dude, his revelations of all the awful stuff that he'd done in the past had come to light in recent years, attempts to talk his star pupil down. But Cyclops is not gonna hear it. Pissed at Xavier, and rightfully so to be honest, although this may have not been the best timing for him to do this, Psyche refuses to give in to Charles's control and simply straight up kills him in response. As he could do because he has the Phoenix Force. So I mean, I guess Charles was like, I can win this. I got like emotional things I can use. No, didn't work. Phoenix says no. Number 4, the Fallen One versus King Thanos. This fight is literally described as one-sided in the comic it appears in itself. This one comes to us from the alternate reality where Thanos wins in issue number 17 of the 2016 Thanos series. With this arc in the series, Thanos wins, being by Donny Cates. Thank you, Mr. Cates, for giving us Cosmic Ghost Rider in this one. So awesome. Here we see the Fallen One, who is now shiny Onyx, formerly Silver Surfer, deemed worthy enough to wield Mjolnir. He fights against King Thanos, who has killed almost all life in the cosmos. The Fallen One attempts to make him pay and initially has the upper hand, but in the end is beaten back, impaled, and torn asunder before being pulverized. And he also loses his buddy Hulk, so it's really sad.
Number 3, Batman Who Laughs vs. Perpetua. Remember how I said Joker would be showing up again? Well, I kinda half lied. It's actually a Jokerized Batman, which is taking two of the arguably most popular DC hero and villain combos and mashing them together. Who can stand in the way of that? Also, to call this fight one-sided is a little debatable, but the Batman Who Laughs rose from being just a man to becoming a multiversal level threat very quickly after he gained access to the powers of Dr. Manhattan. This level of power allowed him to face and defeat Perpetua, one of, if not the, most powerful god in DC Comics, who is mother of the multiverse. He became the nightmare of one of the most powerful beings in all of DC Comics, sealing her away within fragments of the Source Wall. Number 2, Thanos vs. Loki. Taking a break from comic books for a moment here, let's journey to the MCU. Loki is one of those characters who has elevated himself beyond the status of villain into a bit more of an anti-hero role, and the popularity of Tom Hiddleston's portrayal of the character is likely somewhat to blame for that. But popularity is not saving this character. In the opening of Avengers Infinity War, Thanos attacks the remaining Asgardians after the events of Ragnarok. Though they are Asgardians, he does seem to lay waste to them pretty easily. With Loki feigning allegiance to the Mad Titan, he makes a move against Grimace with a dagger only to be stopped, disarmed, and choked to death without the big bad even seeming to break a sweat, truly solidifying just how much of a threat Thanos is going to be. And in at number 1 is THRAGG vs. Dinosaurus. The Viltrumites from the Invincible comic series are a race of near invulnerable, incredibly strong, world-conquering aliens. But none among them stands as strong, as invulnerable as Grand Regent THRAGG. Battle-hardened over thousands of years, only the most powerful characters can even hope to stand one-on-one against this powerhouse. David Anders, the villain known as Dinosaurus, is not one of those characters. While Dinosaurus is very strong, it's more his intelligence that is his greatest weapon. Dinosaurus allied himself with Invincible around issue 90 of the comics, and he would see THRAGG attempt to take down Mark. Dinosaurus attacks THRAGG, but his claws break on THRAGG's skin. THRAGG pummels the Dino Man, but he stops, distracted by an explosion, giving Dinosaurus the chance to chomp on his head, only for him to completely shatter his teeth, giving THRAGG the chance to mock him and then break his jaw and leave him for dead. Luckily, Dinosaurus uses the opportunity to heal and escape with Mark.
Number 10, Iron Man vs. Squirrel Girl. I love how even during Doreen Green's very first appearance, she earned her title of being unbeatable. The very first time we meet Squirrel Girl, she's attempting to impress Iron Man in the hopes of earning a place at his side as his sidekick. The crazy part is she successfully ambushed him too. During a test flight for his new collision avoidance radar, that's really what he calls it, Doreen jumps onto his flying suit of armor, with him inside. Unable to see except through digital readouts that appear on a visor he's wearing, he is successfully successfully surprised and thrown off course. When Iron Man attempts to remove his visor, Doreen uses her tail to block his vision still. In the end, they both crash to the ground, and Doreen introduces herself as Squirrel Girl, explaining that she simply wanted to prove herself to him in order to earn a place as his pard, short for partner. Sadly, he turns her down, even though she did prove that she's pretty awesome, I think, in that issue. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, please head on down, give this video a thumbs up, also to let us know that you want to hear about some more one-sided fights. Number 9. Trinity vs. Harley Quinn. In one of what can only be described as one of the most wild fights ever that seems to be more about clout than powers or ability, Harley Quinn managed to defeat not one, not two, but all three heroes that we consider as belonging to DC's Holy Trinity. We're talking about Batman, Wonder Woman, and of course, Superman. When did this go down? During Heroes in Crisis. And how did Harley do it? By playing on the weaknesses of the heroes she was up against, and also utilizing Batman's utility belt, of course, which in and of itself generally is equipped with items needed to take down Bat's colleagues, because that's just how Batman rolls. It's like, I always got kryptonite on me though, just in case, you never know. Number 8. Jubilee vs. Wolverine. Sometimes heroes get slapped by other heroes. Slapped. Such a great onomatopoeia. In the case of Jubilee, this is what happened when Wolverine came face to face with her. Of course, this wasn't just normal Jubes, this was Jubes under the influence of the Shadow King. She was possessed by him, in fact. Initially, Wolverine baited her in by promising that he wouldn't hurt her. Wolverine says, in fact, "I ain't gonna fight you, Jube. I couldn't." But it turns out that that's a lie. Although he doesn't badly injure Jubilee, knowing she is not in control of herself at this moment, he does knock her out with a slap. A slapped, if you will. Of course, this wasn't a direct fight between the two heroes, as Wolverine was only doing this to protect others from Jubilee, and likely also to protect Jubilee from herself at this moment in time.
Number 7. Joker vs. Simon. Yes, it is the Joker again, and guess what? He will appear later on as well. But I also hear you asking, Adam, who the heck is Simon? Exactly. That's my point. You think that the infamous Joker is going to fall to a guy named Simon, who most people haven't even heard of? Simon is a villain of the Teen Titans who has vast telekinesis and telepathic powers, and he is also the leader of the Fearsome Five. But in Salvation Run number 2, he is a member of the new Injustice League when a bunch of villains get exiled to an alien world. He attempts to convince his fellow supervillains that escape is impossible, and then proceeds to lay down plans for beginning a new civilization, only to be very abruptly interrupted by the Joker, who runs up and smashes Simon's brain in with a rock, repeatedly. Like I said, it was very abrupt. Number 6. General Zod vs. Captain Boomerang. Never put a captain up against a general. It will not go well. In 2016's Suicide Squad, in literally the second issue, Task Force X are sent on a mission to Russia to retrieve or destroy an unknown device. Turns out that device is actually a portal to the Phantom Zone. Rather than leave it be, Captain Boomerang approaches the portal and is literally incinerated down to his ankles instantly by none other than General Zod, who was trapped inside only to break free. I doubt the Boomerang guy would have been able to help much in the squad's fight against Zod. Honestly, it's a miracle any of them actually survived at all. Number 5. Venom vs. Sandman. In Peter Parker's Spider-Man Volume 1, number 16, Sandman took to reforming the Sinister Six to go after Spider-Man. Now, one of those six was Eddie Brock, aka Venom. Being the villain he once was, Venom betrayed Sandman and the two got into a fight. Things quickly take a turn for the violent and chompy as Brock/Venom takes a huge chunk out of Sandman's body, causing Sandy to destabilize and break down, unable to stop himself from dissipating into a nearby storm drain. It's a pretty awful and pretty quick dispatching. Sandman does eventually return, but not as his old self, as the years spent in a kind of ghostly form left him in kind of tatters. Damn Venom. Number 4. Kite Man vs. Riddler's army. Okay, I am a sucker for an underdog. In Batman Volume 3, there was the war of jokes and riddles between the Joker and the Riddler, surprisingly, each fueled by their desire to take Batman's life. Now, each of these lunatics had gathered up a group of villains to their side, and they caused a hell of a lot of damage to Gotham and its people in their war. One person caught in the crossfire would be Charles Brown. Charles became a mole for Batman in Joker's army, and when Riddler found out, he brought Charles's son to an end. Charles became Kite Man and joined up with the Joker to get revenge. With Batman's help, Riddler takes down Joker's army one by one, leaving only Kite Man, who is forced to switch sides. In the final climactic battle though, Kite Man helps Batman and Riddler's army infiltrate the Joker's holdout, and when the battle is won and the villains turn on Batman, Kite Man had a backup plan that allowed him to almost single-handedly incapacitate 8 of the biggest bads on Batman's rogues gallery, helping Batman save the day. Never underestimate Kite Man. Hell yeah.
Number 3. Batman vs. Bane. Probably one of the most famous fights in comic book history. In this fight, Batman is brutalized by Bane. Bane ends up escaping Arkham and decides to see, how much havoc he can cause. When Batman ends up overwhelmed by the hordes of recently escaped criminals swarming the streets, Bane takes this as an opportunity to strike. Run down and exhausted after a night of non-stop fighting at this point, Batman is easily defeated by the villain, who famously breaks Batman's back over his knee, which we have that awesome page of, that awesome cover. Ouch. Bruce Wayne's Batman would return from this, but it would take him some time to heal. As you know, does happen if you break your back. Which you can heal from, it is possible, but it's not super easy to do. Number 2. Wolverine vs. Punisher. And maybe one of the most controversial of one-sided fights of all time, we see 2 heroes fight against one another, both who generally use less than heroic methods for getting things done. However, one of them still seems to be called a hero on the regular, that being Wolverine, while the other is often relegated to a different category, that of anti-hero, that being Punisher. It's kinda interesting. The two originally were kind of working toward the same goal here, but when they both differ on the method of how to deal with the situation, Wolverine ends up getting pretty humiliated in the ensuing fight, with Punisher even at one point steamrolling Logan. And that's after he does a whole bunch of other awful things to him, some of which I can't even say. That's how bad they are. Number 1. Joker vs. Superman. Can we even call this one a fight? It's kinda just straight up murder, really. Although maybe rightfully executed murder? I don't know. I don't think murder's ever really right. I guess it also depends on which side of this conflict you feel you're on, though I think by the end of Injustice, pretty much all of us are on Batman's side, right? No? Yes? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But back to the fight at hand. This one obviously went down in the alternate reality of Injustice. Here, Joker and Harley Quinn end up manipulating Superman into killing Lois by making him think he's fighting Doomsday. In doing so, they not only have killed Lois, but also her and Superman's future offspring, and all of Metropolis gets blown up too as well. Unsurprisingly, Superman does not take this very well, and when they get Joker in an interrogation room, Superman ends up cracking under the pressure of Joker's unrelenting grin, killing the Joker in cold blood. Because that's what would probably also happen if the Joker came up against Superman. Well, just saying, if Superman wanted to at any time, he could just pretty much end that. Number 10. Magneto vs. URANOS. During an X-Men Red tie-in issue for the AXE Judgment Day event, in a fight that lasted barely a page and a half, URANOS completely destroys Magneto. And I mean destroys him. And never mind Magneto. Although that brief battle is something to behold, URANOS completely wrecks most of planet Arakko too. Well, him and his army, but still. While Magneto would later on get some sweet revenge on URANOS, in the first fight the two have, URANOS manages to wrench Magneto's heart from his body, seemingly killing him, which was very shocking at the time. However, we later learn that Magneto manages to stay alive to fight another day by controlling the metal in his blood, controlling its flow throughout his body. So even without a heart, his blood can move and he can stay alive. Also, for those of you claiming that Magneto shouldn't count on this list because he's a villain, I'd say that lately Magneto's actually been pretty heroic, so it's safe to count him here, at least from my perspective. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you need to read some comics, because there's some really good X-Men books happening right now. You are missing out, like X-Men Red. And friends, before I move on to this next spot, if you are loving what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and you are like, oh my gosh, I wish they did this with anime and manga, guess what? We do! And you can check it out over at Most Amazing Top 10 Anime. Number 9. Aquaman vs. the Death Kraken. I mean, this is definitely a one-sided fight, because in the end, Arthur has no chance but to basically give up. Or, well, I guess not give up per se, but to potentially sacrifice himself to defeat the enemy. Which makes it sound a lot more balanced than it is, but trust me, it's not that balanced of a fight. The Death Kraken is basically a giant cosmic kraken known as a space kraken. These beings roam the cosmos, devouring parts of, or in some cases, entire worlds. Kinda like Galactus, but more terrifying to behold because, you know, they're krakens. The Death Kraken has an intense hunger for death, and so it wants to actually devour worlds, whereas its twin, the Flood, hungers for oceans. In order to defeat the Death Kraken, Arthur realized that he had no other choice but to enter the Kraken, allowing it to basically consume him whole as he had the life force within him, the opposite of the death energy that the Death Kraken was sustained by. So he was like, that should cancel the other one out and I should be able to defeat it. Aquaman successfully did defeat the creature, but it is implied that it cost him his life to do so. And I mean, I can't see any other way that would have gone. I mean, look at that thing. The Death Kraken is massive and it's horrifying. It's gigantic. I mean, that feels just like a very uneven fight, just seeing those two beings together. Number 8, Batman versus Wonder Woman. It just goes to show you that although Batman is super skilled, prepared, strong of body, mind, and will, it isn't enough to rival the might that is Wonder Woman. In Wonder Woman, the Hikatea, Batman attempts to apprehend a woman wanted for murder, but is blocked from doing so by Wonder Woman, who is tied and bound to that woman, Danielle Wellies, who is called on the right of Hikatea. Performing the ritual correctly means that Danielle has Diana's protection, in exchange for her servitude to Diana. However, not only does Batman fail to beat Wonder Woman in combat to get Danielle from her, but he also fails when he tries to also use the same ritual to get Wonder Woman's protection. Yikes! That's a pretty bad defeat right there. He's sort of like, alright, maybe I can do the thing, and she's like, you can't do it. You kinda suck at it, Batman, but so nah. Number 7, Shazam versus Superman. Shazam versus Superman is a fight that everyone is always eager to know about when it comes to who ends up on top, who will win. They're so similar, but so different. Multiple times, the person who has won has actually been Superman though, despite his weakness to magic, specifically Shazam, or as he was once known, Captain Marvel's magic lightning. Despite this, Superman has before used Shazam's own lightning against him though, putting him in the way of it and thereby transforming Shazam back into his kid form of human boy Billy Batson, proving that sometimes it's not necessarily about power, but instead all you need is the right technique or course of action to turn a fight. I think that's personally why I would always feel like Superman would usually win that fight, because I feel like Superman, he's just got the know-how a little bit more than Shazam does. Experience, you know, experience. Number 6, Gambit versus Wolverine. Although this might not be as satisfying for our editors here at Top 10 Nerd, sorry editors, this one comes to us from the Wolverine podcast series, really in essence a serial radio play, so not a lot of images, but there's lots of images of Wolverine and Gambit that exist, so hey. For this one, I am talking about Wolverine the Lost Trail. By the way, if you haven't listened to either The Long Night or Lost Trail, I highly recommend both. They are both very well cast, produced, and with a great story. And if you ever wanted to picture Richard Armitage as Logan, you can do so here, as it's his voice you're going to be hearing in this role. In the episode Greenhaven is Everywhere, the penultimate episode for this story, Logan frees himself from Jason Wyngarde's control, only to face a still mind-manipulated Gambit. While Gambit attempts to convince Logan with the words that joining Wyngarde's Greenhaven is the right thing for him to do, Logan, of course, refuses to hear it. He's not about the mind control right now, he's not feeling it. As a result, Gambit pulls out his cards and tensions begin to rise. The two actually circle each other, which you can hear reflected in the audio dialogue if you happen to be listening with headphones on. And in the end, when Logan decides the only way out of this is to take out Gambit, Remy goes for his bow staff. He's like, I don't even need my cards, I just need my bow staff. Not true in this case. Logan quickly cuts his staff in half. Gambit then asks Logan if he'll be cut in half next, to which Logan responds, nope, if I can't get through to you with words, pausing to punch him in the face before adding, fist to the face should do it. Which it did, so true. Number 5, the Justice League versus Perpetua. Sometimes when it comes to one-sided fights, it's about heroes smacking down other heroes, or heroes smacking down villains. But in this case, it's about a whole team of heroes who got destroyed by a single villain. Though to be fair, this villain is also kind of like woven into the fabric of reality, as it is understood not just in the DC universe, but beyond that, into the DC multiverse, and even kinda beyond that. During the events of Death Metal, Wonder Woman faces off with Perpetua earlier on, and could have stopped her, but when Perpetua first explains the true nature of anti-crisis energy, which Wonder Woman needs to use to defeat Perpetua's crisis energy, Wonder Woman is hesitant to use the anti-crisis. During her hesitancy, Perpetua and Batman Who Laughs destroy reality, rebuilding it with crisis energy in Perpetua's image, unleashing the dark multiverse, with Batman Who Laughs later in turn betraying Perpetua. Justice League loses, with Batman, Wonder Woman, and Supes all being given a new horrible place in this dark world. While this loss is shocking and intense, later Diana does become willing to unleash the anti-crisis energy after understanding the cost of it and deciding that although it's a pretty scary change, it's still better than, you know, Perpetua's and Batman Who Laughs' way. So it's a temporary loss, but still it was quite a dramatic one, and we got a lot of cool alternate versions of characters, so yay! Number 4. Doctor Doom vs. Squirrel Girl. In the same issue that Squirrel Girl handily defeated Iron Man, although he remained unimpressed with her, Squirrel Girl also takes on master villain Doctor Doom and once more proves her mettle as an unbeatable superhero. Here it was Squirrel Girl's ability to communicate with squirrels that allowed her to defeat Doom, causing him to abandon his own ship. I kid you not. I also love how Doom, I feel like, still sees this as a victory in his mind. Also, I bet Doom would say this was a Doombot. I don't know if this has been retconned to a Doombot yet, but I could see Doom saying that. Basically, Dorian Green has been an unstoppable force since day one, as Marvel Superheroes number 8 from the 1990s is actually her first appearance, if you can believe that. Number 3. Batman vs. the Joker. Not just any Joker either. For this point we are talking about Emperor Joker. This is an extremely powerful version of the Joker who gets 99.99 of Mr. Mixie's Pitilix power after tricking him out of it. Mr. Mixie was going to give Joker 1%, but he got swindled by the jokester, because of course he did. The Joker uses his newfound power to do a bunch of nasty things, but one of which is basically tormenting Batman on a daily basis before killing him each and every day, only to resurrect him the next day, bringing him back so he can do it all over again. The defeat is actually so traumatic for Batman that eventually, when Superman does find a way to beat the Joker, restoring the world to normal, Superman is actually forced to take Batman's memories of the daily torment from his mind. Otherwise, Batman would have been unable to operate as a hero, or really a person, as that entire experience broke him. Also, you know something's bad when it breaks Batman. He's a pretty unbreakable guy normally. Number 1. Green Lantern vs. Batman. A lot of times Batman gets the final say in these Green Lantern fights. For this point, we are not talking about Hal Jordan though, but instead everyone's favorite Lantern, well, at least some people's favorite Lantern anyways, Guy Gardner. Guy Gardner is a Green Lantern who's been known to get on his teammates' nerves. At times, his cockiness is a little too much for his fellow heroes, which may have been the case when Batman referred to him as a mongrel. But of course, Guy did not take such an insult in stride. In response to this, he challenges Batman to a fight he is sure to lose, unfortunately. Batman accepts the challenge and knocks him out in one punch, which comes back a few different times in the comics. It's a pretty memeable and hilarious moment, to be honest. It's important to keep in mind that Guy, you know, isn't using his ring in this fight, although he didn't get much of a chance to, even if he wanted to do that. As Mr. Miracle says, I'll say this for Batman, he's efficient. Just one punches Guy Gardner, oh boy.